Hello, friends. It's been a little while since I did one of these, and, I was kind of looking for a good, jumping off point like I usually do in these. And seriously, if you do have any questions that you want me to, discuss at God knows how long the length is, given how much I can talk nonstop, just leave them in the comments. I will see it. But this is an interesting one. This is one that I don't really get to talk about much. But I kind of thought it would be interesting to discuss just life in Louisiana, like growing up down here. User Elena Barbary, I hope I said that right, actually asked that. After this is the episode. Oh, which episode was this? Friends with Beard Part 1. So that'd be episode 4. They said, after this episode full of nostalgia, I definitely need one specifically on Louisiana. I've always had an image of it in my mind, but I really want to know how it's like actually living there, the good and the bad. Well, that's a very unique thing. Eventually I'd like to do some of these talking with my friends Bubs and my other friend who has finally told me he has a name now, and he has been on the server a couple times too, and we'll call him Fancy Drew, because that's what he told me I should call him, and I love him to death. They both also grew up down here, but I guess we can start with, where exactly did Moonhorse come from? Because that's always a good place to start. I mentioned growing up in a kind of smaller city, not super small, but yeah, it's a city, further south from here, and that would be where I was born. So I was born and raised in Thibodaux, which is like a little, it started as kind of like a college town. Nickel State University is there, and the biggest things that were kind of there, when I was growing up anyway, was we had the university, which attracted a lot of stuff, and the university is like gigantic now, and we had a massive sugarcane industry. I don't know what word I was trying to say there, but there it was. Which is the reason why I chose the picture of sugarcane for the intro, like the title card, whatever you want to call it for these, is because that every spring and summer, seeing just rows upon rows of sugarcane very much reminds me of childhood. Granted, I still live in Louisiana, but I don't feel the same about this where I live now. I live like way further north, and it's not the same. It's too close to the Mississippi border. It feels more like Mississippi. I don't feel like this is, Louisiana. But when I was younger, I grew up on the way on the outskirts of town. And the closest stores, I have weird memories of some of these close stores that we would go to when I was younger, is there was a shopping center that was kind of like an L-shaped shopping center. And the three stores that I remember going to the most with my mom are K&B Drugstore, which was on the corner of this shopping center, I know. A grocery store called Delchamps. That's Delchamps. I know. And Kmart, because that was before all of that. I was born in 1986. I'm very old, I know. But it was weird. Like, I have all these memories about going there. I specifically, anytime I hear, like, Kenny G specifically, I have immediate flashbacks to, like, Delchamps and K&B Drugstore, because that's all they would play over the loudspeakers. I don't know why, like, Kenny G, I don't know why soft jazz, but it was just, like, a thing, and it's just ingrained in me. But, yeah, I went there, and if you can believe it, growing up, the first school that wasn't, like, a preschool, that I went to was a Catholic school, which explains why I'm not a Catholic, doesn't it? And it as well was a really weird place. Like, there's a lot of stuff that was like prefabbed, and Thibodaux was kind of growing, but the most concrete memories, like I have a lot being young, like where I lived in the outskirts of town before we moved, literally on one side of the street were all of the houses and all this other stuff, and on the other side were just fields of sugarcane. Like, they had rezoned this field. It was a sugarcane field, and our house was on one of the, what's referred to the headlands, which are like, when you have sugarcane fields, there's like one portion that's slightly higher, like you intentionally make it, build up the dirt in that area so it sits a little higher, and that's usually where you keep your equipment. It's not a super huge area, but it also doesn't accumulate a lot of water. And you want those lower portions to accumulate water because that's where you plant the sugarcane. And, they're plants, they need water. So, I remember I lived out there for a while and I was friends with a bunch of my neighbors. I had like pretty much three neighbors, no, four, I'm sorry, that I talked to the most. And they were the ones, my neighbors who lived to the right of us were a little older than me, but were like big computer nerd kind of guys, and they were the ones who introduced me to things like Doom and Wolfenstein and Diablo and all these old PC games, and I was just like, that's so cool. Because I didn't have a computer. I had like an NES and a Genesis. And it was weird. It was like video games were kind of a big thing growing up too, but they were always kind of like, it's a thing, and then, it happens. You just like, it wasn't quite as, I don't know, huge as it is now. It was just kind of like a pastime. But it was a fun, like, neighborhood. We moved after that. We moved to this other place further in town, but a lot of my specific Louisiana memories started whenever I was in around junior high and high school, because I got way more independent and started going and doing things without, having family around, because I was around the age that I could do that. So when we were, I don't remember what year this would be. I had to be maybe just before getting into like 7th grade, maybe 6th or 7th grade, maybe even earlier. That same shopping center I described became important because behind it, they had cleared out a lot of land and they had built condos, and our family rented one. Like, that's where we lived. And that was, you know what? I can tell you might be a better barometer for telling which year it was. That was around the time Pokemon was becoming a huge thing. So that lets you know, like, right around the time that I'm talking about, like, yes, there was in fact a time before Pokemon existed, and it was interesting. But I had discovered that I could just walk to these stores. Like, we literally lived right behind, like, this Kmart and stuff. So I could just walk up across the complex and climb up the little embankment and just walk around from behind the store to the front and then just go in. So I would go to, like, Kmart and stuff and run small errands for my mom. And with what little, pocket change or whatever I had, I could go to Kmart and we used to play the Pokemon trading card game, myself and my friends. And I'd be able to get booster packs and stuff from Kmart. And I just had a sudden flashback. Kmart had, when you would go to buy video games, these huge plastic racks. Like, I don't know how to describe them. They were almost like, almost set up like they were big pages in a book, because you would flip them. The N64 games specifically were in those, and you could turn them and see the front and the back of the box. But I think that they had been there since around, like, maybe like Atari or NES, because that Kmart had been there for a long time, because no one ever fucking greased these things, and anytime you wanted to look at, like, the N64 games, you would turn the thing and it would just fucking squeal. Every single one of them, and there were like 5 of them, so you'd flip it and just be like, and it was just, oh god, it was so weird. And all the video game stuff was kept in, like, the electronics section, but all the way at the back of it, in, like, this weird dark corner. Not like now, where everything's all well-lit, because, hey, video games make money. But, like, back in the day, it was just like, oh, that's kids' stuff, you know, who cares? It's a toy. So they didn't really, like, it was all kind of weird. But that Kmart would sell stuff for cheaper, because around then, like, we did have a Walmart in town, but it was on the other side of town. So I didn't really go there very often at that time. But that Kmart always sold shit for cheaper, so I could get, like, video games for cheaper than you could at Walmart, and that was back that if you wanted to go to a specific game store, we had 2 in town, I think, or in the area, not necessarily in town. They're one town over in a city called Homa. I didn't go to one of them. I've never been to the one. There was one, I forget the name of it now, but there was another one that was in the mall called Babbage's. And years later, my Neckbeard friends would always go there. Like, Elle would go there and some of his friends. I didn't really like going to Babbage's because, again, I could get better prices at the Kmart. So I would just get it there. Like, Babbage's, I remember they were selling like a, I think it was the Game Boy Color at the time. Maybe it was the Advance. No, I had a Color. I remember because it was like teal. And Babbage's wanted like, I think almost $100 for it. And I found it at Kmart for like $75. So it was like $20 cheaper. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to get it there. And Kmart would always like liquidate their stuff if they couldn't get rid of it. For example, I have a, I think it still works too. I'm just missing certain cables for it. I have an N64, but they usually sold for about $100. I got that one for about $45 because it was like see-through plastic purple. That was when Nintendo was trying to do like the iMac thing and sold a bunch of consoles that were in different weird colors to get like people to buy it. But nobody apparently in Thibodeau wanted the see-through plastic purple one. So it had been sitting on their shelves for so fucking long that they were just like, somebody buy this shit. And I was just like, I don't give a shit what color it is as long as it works. So that's how I got it for like way cheaper. This is turning into me talking about that specific store, but I do have a lot of like weird memories with that. That was also the first store that I went to and found out that Bandai was selling Gundam Wing action figures, and I bought like a shitload of them. I still have a bunch of them. They were like super cool. I have a little Wing Gundam on my desk in the house. That was like the first one I ever bought. So I was just like, what the fuck? This is so cool. And I'd never, like up until that point, I'd never seen like figures for like anime. That wasn't really now that's like a thing, you know. If you want it, you can find it anywhere. You can find toys for all kinds of that stuff. But that wasn't a thing back in the day. That was during like the beginnings of like the anime boom. Like I had to watch episodes of Gundam Wing, like reruns of it on Toonami, and oh my god, I just had like a huge wave of nostalgia. So Toonami, wow, okay, I don't even think this site exists anymore. I'm actually gonna check. In the middle of recording this, I know, I'm so professional. No, it doesn't. Okay. So, I don't know if this is categorized anywhere else, but yeah, I'm not seeing it. So Toonami, back in the day, started up a website. This was like, you know, early dial-up internet days. You know, the days of AOL, which is another thing I would go to Kmart for because they gave out the AOL disc for free. So anytime our internet subscription would be like, you have to give us a card now, I'd just uninstall the program and use one of the free AOL discs that I could just take handfuls of them. They didn't give a shit. They would just be like, yeah, take them. So I would like put like 6 or 7 of them in a bag and just get free internet for a while. But man, those were the days. No, Toonami had it was literally a fan site. It was a site that someone made who was such a big fan of the block of shows that this you know, the Cartoon Network ran, that they made this website called Toonami Blast, and they decorated it with sprites from the, like animated sprites made into animated GIFs from the Gundam Wing fighting game for the Super Nintendo that was only released in Japan, Endless Duel. And they would dedicate whole sections, like they had all these sections to each different show that Toonami was running at the time, and they'd explain it, and they'd have a bunch of images from it. And that that kind of fan site became so popular that the guys who ran Toonami at Cartoon Network started acknowledging it, started being like, yeah, they're really good. They do like more coverage than we do on some of this stuff. They're super comprehensive. Because whenever a show would go off of Toonami, they would remove it from the site. Like, it's not on their thing anymore, but not the sister site. They always archived it. Not the show itself, but like info on it. And I remember it because I remember finding it, and every time you would start it, it would play a MIDI file of the theme song from Gundam Wing. This is what I grew up with. I spent a lot of time on computers and like bumming around town because I was like a weird kid. Didn't have a lot of friends, so I was just like, internet. I had a lot of friends on Yahoo Instant Messenger. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I was that guy. So yeah, like it was kind of weird. That area was a little strange. And I kind of enjoyed it, but I didn't really have a lot of friends. And it wasn't until I changed schools, because I was going to one school that was actually in Homa, so I didn't really have a lot of people to hang out with. But it wasn't until we changed schools I changed schools, and then we moved. We moved to another place that was more in the center of town. These apartments that I've talked about several times, they're honestly, like, they're still there, which is kind of cool. The other places too, but I like the brick apartments that we moved into. That's the way my family always referred to them, because big shock, they're made of bricks, I know. I like those a little bit better because they were in the center of town, and that was around the times that Bubs and Fancy Drew and I became really close friends. And we would just go on like weird little adventures, walking around town, getting into shit, just all kinds of stuff. And it was honestly like a really cool place. That was closer to the Walmart, so we would start going there. Obviously, we're several miles from the block of stores that I used to go to, so I hadn't been there in like a really long time. Oh god. Oh, the K&B, I just had like a huge flashback. So I had this friend that I had known since childhood. I'm just gonna call him B-Man. Not G-Man, or just B. Let's just call him B. Anyway, B, because I just realized how confusing that would be. That's why I'm doing this. We found out that the K&B was closing, and we were just like, oh man, that sucks. K&B's been around forever. And we would like, they always sold like comic books and candy for relatively cheap. So that's usually where we get that. And I just had like a weird collection of strange comics. Nothing super, I wasn't like super heavy into it. I was more like weird into the internet and reading all kinds of crazy shit online, which is now what I do for a living. But no, we found out that they were closing down, and they started throwing all of the K&B stuff, like signs and papers and all this other stuff, into this dumpster that was behind Kmart, because Kmart had the bigger dumpster. K&B just had one of those little bitty ones because it was a little bitty store. So since they had to liquidate everything, I guess they were just like, yeah, sure, you can throw it in there. So one day, while B and I, like, he'd stayed over at my house one night, we were gonna go the next day. It's like real early in the morning too, over to like the stores, and I don't know, we were just gonna like go see, I guess, what was going on, just hang out like weird teenagers. And we saw all of the signage and stuff in the dumpster. And so B had this idea. He's like, we can't just leave this shit here, man. This is cool. This is like K&B stuff. There's, we're never gonna see this store again. This is like such a thing. So we went back to my house because he had come over like after school. So we just emptied out our backpacks, and we went back and just like stole a whole bunch of stuff out of the dumpster. And he still has, last time I checked, he still has like this sign that was over the pharmacy. There's like this big purple sign. It's like the K&B logo, and it's like your family drugstore. And he had that hung over his bed for the longest time. It was a big sign. It was like, and we found these boxes. I remember like they had the K&B logo on them, and I think I still have some of them somewhere. I don't know. But we found these boxes, and they were just these big cardboard boxes, and we got some signs and stuff like that, and I used to have some. I think mine got messed up. I don't know where they are now. But we were just like, let's grab these boxes. I don't know what's in them, but let's see, you know, they're all sealed up, so let's just grab them and go. Because it looked like literally somebody had just taken them out of the store and thrown them directly into the trash. So we get a bunch of them, like 4 and 5 each, and bring them back to my house. We have all this stuff, and we just go up to the room, and, you know, we go to my room, and I've got this little pocket knife, so we're just going to open up the boxes, see what's in them. And we found thousands of K&B pencils and ink pens and just stationery pads that just all had the K&B logo on them. That's all that was in the boxes. It was just like office supplies stuff. And I'll never forget, because K&B was like, everybody went there. It was like one of those drugstores that was just in town forever, so everybody went there. And that year, that was the year we both started going to the same high school, and I had kept a bunch of the boxes in my closet because he didn't have like the space or something. So it's like we divided up, like, you know, we have this big. It was pretty good. It was like shoe boxes. They're like that, roughly about that size, of just like notepads, ink pens, stuff like that. So I was like, well, we'll divide it in half, you know, because we went and got more, obviously, but we divided our spoils in half. And he came to me like I don't know, 2 or 3 days after we were in school. He like called me. I remember that because we weren't at school. He called me when I got home, and he was like, dude, do you still have like a bunch of those boxes and stuff? And I was like, yeah, why? And he's like, everybody in all of my classes had, like, they noticed, like, I guess some of his friends and like some of the people he was like sharing workspaces with in school were just like, whoa, where'd you get the K&B pencil? And they were just like super jealous. And he was like, we should totally fucking sell them. And we did. We made a pretty good deal of money off of it, too. We sold it for like 50 cents for a pencil, like $1 for an ink pen, and like $1 for a notepad, or something like that. And it's because the store was closed, now they were like rare. And we just had like this weird stash. And then like, I think my favorite part was, I had a language teacher or something, if I'm not mistaken, English or something. And, after we had just given a whole bunch of people these pencils, and she was just like, she asked me at one point, it's like, okay, I guess she didn't realize we were the ones doing it, because she was like, where's everybody getting these pencils? And I was like, oh, I have a bunch of the K&B pencils. And she was like, oh, can I have one? Because we used to go there all the time when, like, you know, that was my like corner drugstore, and there's so many memories. And I was like, oh yeah, you can have like 2. So everybody had one. Just everybody in our high school started getting like K&B stuff because it was like the cool thing, and it was just like such a fucking nostalgia trip. I remember that. I cannot believe we ganked those boxes like that, though. That was really funny. Growing up, like how I did in Louisiana, is like a story of just like weird dumpster diving, exploring places we totally should not have been, and things like that. Like, B still lived way out where I used to live when I was like real little. So across the street was still the cane field. And we found out one time, we just went hiking in the cane field, because the sugar cane, like the growing time was over. There's just nobody there. These fields are just empty now. So we decided we're going to go walk around, because we never really get to. I'm just going to kind of see what's out there. And we found that apparently, we always thought like the ditches that ran around the front were like the main, you know, runoffs. Like that's where all the water, you know, excess water drains there. We were 100% wrong. The main like runoff ditches were actually at the back, and they were like 10 times bigger than anything we'd ever seen. I don't know where this picture is, but I remember, because it was very, very early digital camera days. Like I had this little pin cam that you wouldn't know what the picture looked like until you plugged it into your computer. But it had a little viewfinder, which was just a square, and you would like click it. And I have a picture somewhere of we each, because it didn't have a timer, so we took it each for one of us, of B and I standing in this culvert that I mean, the top still had to be a good 10 feet above his head, and he was like maybe 6'1" at the time. So this was a massive fucking culvert. I don't know how the hell we got all the way down there. I think we climbed down at one point and then just walked down to it. Because obviously the walls were like really fucking tall. There's no way we climbed down that way. But yeah, like we absolutely should not have been in there, and that was probably really dangerous, but we did it anyway. I have all these pictures of, I think I still do somewhere, of myself and Bubs and Fancy Drew and I said myself, in the old construction site that was now the reservoir. It's like a walking track, and it's like a park. But at the time, they had drained one whole side. And I'll never forget the time I discovered that, because I was just like, I'm going to walk around town. I was like, nobody to hang out with, so I was just like, well, I'm just going to walk around and see what's going on. And I went past the Civic Center, and that's where the park is. And I just like, well, let's see what they're doing over here. So I always see these machines, and I climbed up and realized, because you have to climb up the side to get where the top of this thing is. It's a man-made reservoir. It doesn't sink down. And I realized one whole side is just like completely drained. And I was like, what the fuck? This is so cool! So after that, I got in touch with them, and I was like, you guys gotta come over. You gotta see this. This is so cool. So eventually they did, and I remember Fancy Drew being like, this must be what the surface of Mars looks like. It was just like, it was so barren, and it was so weird, and we hung out there like all the time. We absolutely should not have been hanging out there, but we did anyway. Nobody ever saw us because we would go down into it in order to keep from being seen. So you would go down to like where the actual drained out bottom was. At this point, it was all like sun-baked and as hard as a rock, but they had all these crazy fissures running through it and all these cracks because, this place had probably not seen like the light of day in many, many years. In fact, I know it didn't, because at one point we realized that apparently for many years people were pitching glass bottles into the reservoir, and they would just sink and sit on the bottom. And then we found them. And I'll probably forget. You guys will have to remind me. I may put this somewhere, but I actually still have some. I saved them, and they're on my workbench in my shop, just kind of lined up because they're like classics. Like a lot of these bottling plants just don't exist anymore. So yeah, like that was kind of growing up down here was kind of like that. It was kind of just like weird adventures and crazy shit. We got into all kinds of, we hung out with the Neckbeards too, but like they didn't really go on nearly as many adventures as us. I remember, I think it was it was like the summer that we left junior high, because Bubs and I were in the same junior high. And he came over because it was like we got off early that day because they let us out at like 11. Because they were just like, it's the last day. And so we were off for the rest of the day. And Bubs was like, well, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know, I was just kind of hanging out. And he's like, you want to go walk around? And I was like, yeah, sure. And we did. We walked like across the whole damn town just because we could. We were just like, I'm going to walk all the way back to the school. The one that we had been let out of is literally across town from where I was living. So it was like way on the other side of town. And we just went there because, fuck it. And we went to some stores and, just hung out and just walked around. And I have so many fond memories of that, of just walking around and talking. And just like, yeah, that's what we did. And I did that a lot when I lived in Thibodaux. I remember that. We would just walk places. And that was just a thing we did. We would just walk around and hang out, look at stuff. Who knows? Maybe it's a thing I'd still do if I was still there. I don't know. Couldn't tell you. I don't live there now. I live here. This place was different. Moving here was not quite as fun. I didn't really want to, but, we had obligations and stuff happened. So eventually we did. And, yeah, it was weird. It was a huge tonal shift. But around here is where I met other Neckbeards. And, we'll talk about them in another episode of this. Right now, this is going on for quite a bit. I hope this was interesting to listen to. I don't know if it was. But, yeah, I hope you liked it. And if you did, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you really want to show your appreciation, and, if you can, I'm not saying you have to, I have a merch store, which I think there are sales going on in there right now. I added a whole bunch of weird products and stuff that you can just go check out. I mean, why not? And I have a Ko-Fi account if you'd like to donate to keep the lights on in here so we can keep doing whatever the hell it is I'm doing. And, yeah, that's about it, really. I love you all so very much, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.